queer theory? Queer theory basically says that, hey, remember we were all taught that blue is for boys and pink is for girls, and that normal family have exactly one mommy and one daddy? Yeah, that's completely rubbish, and we need to re-educate ourselves. Before we get to some of the pertinent language and terminology, let's start with the queer theory definition. Queer theory's origin is hard to clearly define since it came from multiple critical and cultural contexts including feminism, post-structuralist theory, radical movements of people of color, the gay and the lesbian movements, AIDS activism, many sexual subcultural practices such as sadomasochism, and post-colonialism. Queer theory as an academic tool came about in part from gender and sexuality studies that in turn had their origins from lesbian and gay studies and feminist theory. It is much newer theory in that it was established in the 1990s and contests many of the set ideas of more established fields it comes from by challenging the notion of defined and finite identity categories as well as the norms that create a binary of good versus bad sexuality. Queer theory's contention is that there is no set normal, only changing norms that people may or may not fit into. Making queer theory's main challenge is to disrupt binaries in hopes that this will destroy difference as well as inequality. The term queer theory itself came from Teresa de Lauretis in 1991, who worked in the feminist cultural studies journal Differences entitled Queer Theory, Lesbian and Gay Sexualities. She explains her term to signify that there are at least three interrelated projects at play within this theory: refusing heterosexuality as the benchmark for sexual formations, a challenge to the belief that lesbian and gay studies is one single identity, and a strong focus on the multiple ways that race shapes sexual bias. De Lauretis proposes that queer theory could represent all of these critics together and make it possible to rethink everything about sexuality. In other words, queer theory gives us the option of believing that Sesame Street's Bert and Ernie are a married couple rather than two platonic friends sharing an apartment. So, queer theory subverts heteronormative power and messaging by offering positive representations of queer characters in media like television and in cinema. Some of the core theories in the development of queer theory includes Michael Foucault, Gail Rubin, Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick, and Judith Butler. Michael Foucault's work on sexuality said that it was a discursive production rather than essential part of a human, which came from his larger idea of power not being repressive and negative as productive and generative. In other words, power acts to make sexuality seem like a hidden truth that must be dug out and made be specific. However, Foucault refuses to accept that sexuality can be clearly defined and instead focuses on the expansive production of sexuality within governments of power and knowledge. In addition, Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick, a prominent queer theorist, suggests that culture is so heteronormative, making the heterosexuality the norm, that gay characters and particularly the affection between men and in literature is rendered invincible and must be rooted through a character of the opposite gender to be acceptable.
Alright, now let's tackle about the assumptions of queer theory. Analyzing with a queer perspective has the potential to undermine the basic structure on which any identity relies on, although it does this without completely destroying or forsaking categories of identity. The theory has been understood to be just about questions of sexuality. This perception that queer theory is solely about sexuality has been opposed by having an intersectional approach that starts off with the hypothesis that sexuality cannot be disconnected from the other categories of social status and identity. This allows queer theory to become interdisciplinary and thus create new ways of thinking in how sexuality shapes and is shaped by other factors. Alright, now let's tackle about the questions about queer theory. So first is, what are the politics, ideological agendas of a specific gay, lesbian, or queer works, and how are those politics revealed in, for example, the work's thematic content or portrayals of its characters? So in this question or statement is asking about the political or ideological agendas present in gay, lesbian, or queer works, and how those agendas are showcased in various aspects of the work, such as its theme and character portrayals. It suggests exploring the underlying messages and beliefs conveyed by these works and analyzing how they reflect the political or ideological stances of the creators. So by examining the thematic content and the ways in which the characters are presented, one can gain insights into the politics being expressed in these works. Alright, now let's tackle the second question about queer theory. What are the poetics, literary devices, and strategies of a specific lesbian, gay, or queer work? What does the work contribute to the ongoing attempt to define a uniquely lesbian, gay, or queer poetics, literary tradition, or canon? So this question or statement is asking about the poetics or literary devices and strategies employed in specific lesbian, gay, or queer works. It seeks to understand how these works contribute to the ongoing effort to define a distinct lesbian, gay, or queer poetics, literary tradition, or canon. So the question delves into the artistic techniques and approaches used by these works and explores their significance in shaping a body of literature that is uniquely associated with lesbian, gay, or queer experiences. So, by analyzing the literary devices and strategies employed, one can assess the contributions of these works in establishing a specific poetics and expanding the literary tradition or canon of lesbian, gay, or queer literature. Now, let's tackle the third question of queer theory. What does the work contribute to our knowledge of queer, gay, or lesbian experience and history, including literary history? So this statement or question is asking about the contribution of a particular work to our understanding of queer, gay, or lesbian experience and history, particularly within the context of literary history. So this question, it seeks to explore how the work enhances our knowledge and insights into the experiences, perspectives, and historical narratives of queer, gay, or lesbian individuals. So this question, by examining the content and themes of the work, we can gain a deeper understanding of the unique challenge, triumphs, and complexities faced by these communities. Additionally, the work's place within the larger literary landscape and its relationship to other works can shed light on the evolving representation and recognition of queer, gay, or lesbian voices throughout literary history. Now, let's tackle the fourth question of queer theory. How is queer, gay, or lesbian experience coded in texts that are apparently heterosexual? So this analysis is usually done for works by writers who live at a time when openly queer, gay, or lesbian texts would have been considered unacceptable. Or it is done in order to help reformulate the sexual orientation of a writer formerly presumed heterosexual. In addition to this question, it suggests that there may be hidden or subtextual elements within this text that reflect queer, gay, or lesbian themes or experiences, even if they are not explicitly mentioned. Lastly, this inquiry highlights the complexity and diversity of human experiences and how they can be subtly depicted or alluded to in various forms of literature. Have the fifth question of queer theory. How might the works of heterosexual writers be reread to reveal an unspoken or unconscious lesbian, gay, or queer presence? That is, does the work have an unconscious lesbian, gay, or queer desire or conflict that it submerges or that heterosexual readers have submerged? So this question or statement suggests a rereading of works by heterosexual writers to uncover hidden or unconscious lesbian, gay, or queer elements within the text. So it proposes the idea that these works may contain unspoken desires or conflicts related to queer experiences that are not explicitly addressed. This perspective questions whether the work itself or heterosexual readers have inadvertently overlooked or suppressed these queer themes. So this question, by critically examining the text, its subtext, character dynamics, and other literary elements, one can potentially identify and interpret these submerged queer aspects that have been previously unrecognized or marginalized. This approach aims to expand our understanding of diverse sexual identities and narratives within literary works, challenging traditional assumptions and interpretations. Okay, now let's have the sixth question of queer theory. Is the work consciously or unconsciously homophobic? Does the work critic celebrate or blindly accept heterosexist values? So this question raises about whether a particular work is either consciously or unconsciously homophobic. It also explores whether the work offers a critique of heterosexist values, celebrate them, or simply unquestioningly accepts them. It prompts an analysis of the text's portrayal of homosexuality or queer identities and examines the underlying attitudes, biases, or perspectives that may be present. And also this question, by evaluating the themes, characterizations, and overall messaging of the work, one can determine whether it promotes homophobic views, challenges heterosexism, celebrates diversity, or perpetuates heteronormative assumptions. This inquiry encourages a critical examination of the work's stance towards queer experiences and its role in shaping societal attitudes and beliefs. Alright, now let's tackle the seventh question or the last question of queer theory. How does the literary text illustrate the problematics of sexuality and sexual identity? That is, the ways in which human sexuality does not fall neatly into the separate categories defined by the words homosexual and heterosexual. So this statement or question explores how a literary text depicts the complexities and challenges associated with sexuality and the limitations of rigid categorizations such as homosexual and heterosexual. Then this question, it recognizes that human sexuality is not easily confined to these binary categories and highlights the problematic nature of trying to neatly categorize and define sexual identities. And also, the text aims to illustrate the nuance and fluid nature of human sexuality, showcasing how it can defy simplistic labels and encompass a diverse range of experiences and orientations. Then this question, by examining the portrayal of characters, sexual identities, desires, and relationships within the literary work, one can gain insights into the ways in which it challenges or subverts traditional notions of sexual categories and highlights the complexity of human sexuality.
Alright, so since we're done discussing what is queer theory all about, so let's now apply our understanding through analyzing a literary piece entitled Father Solo by Isagani Cruz. Alright, so Isagani Cruz's short story entitled Father Solo explores the complex themes of identity, sexuality, and societal expectations. So through the lens of queer theory, so this literary piece analyzed the protagonist's struggle with his own desires and the oppressive norms imposed by society. So the short story's central theme revolves around the taboo subject of masturbation and his identity after meeting street maniac Jess. So Cruz delves into this controversial topic, exploring its psychological, emotional, and societal implications through vivid descriptions and introspective character development. So the literary piece challenges traditional norms and sheds light on a topic often considered shameful or inappropriate. So the short story revolves around Father Solo, a Catholic priest who finds himself torn between his religious duties and his repressed homosexual desires. So, through queer theory, it emphasizes the fluidity of sexual identities and challenges heteronormative assumptions. So, Father Solo's internal conflict can be seen as a manifestation of this struggle against societal expectations. So, in addition, Cruz portrays Father Solo as a sympathetic character trapped in a rigid religious institutions that condemns masturbation. So, Father Solo himself plunging for physical intimacy was casted. So, this tension between desire and duty creates an internal struggle to Father Solo that ultimately leads to isolation and despair. So, through queer theory, it also highlights how individuals negotiate their identities within oppressive systems. So, in the story of Father Solo, so he himself attempts to suppress his desires by immersing himself in his religious duties because of a man named Jess. So the reason why Father Solo questioned himself what his real identity is. So, however, as time passed by, this only exacerbates his feelings of confusion and shame. So, furthermore, queer theory challenges traditional notions of gender roles and masculinity. So, Father Solo embodies these contradictions as he tries to reconcile his role as a priest with his suppressed homosexual desires. So, his inability to conform to societal expectations ultimately leads to self-destructions.
Does the work critique, celebrate, or blindly accept heterosexist values? When we say heterosexism, it is the marginalization and or oppression of people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, and or asexual based on the belief that heterosexuality is the norm. This means that heterosexism is based on the idea that romantic and or sexual relationships and feelings between a man and a woman is acceptable, and that all other relationships or feelings are unacceptable or outside the norm. As we can observe in the literature entitled Father Solo, it was mentioned that Jess confessed feelings to Father Solo, and that Jess was never happy with a woman. As per him, only Father Solo seen his soul. With that, the work literature accepts having the relationship outside the norm. What does the work contribute to our knowledge of queer, gay, or lesbian experience and history, including literary history? The literature made the viewers to be open-minded into reading literature that has characters like Father Solo and Jess. It took a big role to play in increasing society's knowledge about and understanding of lesbians, gay men, and bisexual people. It's unusual for the readers to encounter stories such like this, and I think this certain work enlightened its readers about the systems of attitudes, bias, and discrimination in favor of female-male sexuality and relationships.